What up, nerds? My name is Luke. I help people interested in crypto get some returns on their savings through the power of DeFi. So, over the next month, I'm going to build a passive DeFi investment portfolio for my dad. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what kind of portfolio it's going to be, how I'm going to do it, and over the next month, I'm going to release some more videos on the analysis of different investments and how I'm going to set it all up. Right, so over the past year, I've been talking to my dad about crypto and DeFi particularly, and he seems pretty interested. Now, as most people are, they're quite interested. But once I kind of got into the nitty gritty of, MetaMask and the different chains and how you interact with the protocols and how you analyze investments, his eyes start to glaze over a little bit. So, rather than trying to teach him all the basics and some of the advanced things about investments that I go over in my videos, he asked me to just take some of his money, invest it in DeFi, and then have a portfolio there that he can just sit and watch. So a very passive type of portfolio that he can kind of keep an eye on, while if any managing needs to be done, then I can just do that for him. Alright, so the aim of the game is to build a passive DeFi portfolio that generates the highest returns. Now, obviously, the highest returns are always the goal. Like, to generate and to grow your wealth is always the goal whenever you're dealing with investments and even DeFi. So what do I mean by passive is the main parameters. And to me, I want passive effectively to be as little interaction with the portfolio as possible. Like, it's not fully a set and forget, because we're not quite there. The industry isn't as evolved enough in finance. It's not advanced enough that you can just invest your things on these different protocols and then just leave it for 10 years. Right? So by passive, I mean minimal updates and as minimal transactions as possible. So at most, I want to interact with this portfolio maybe once a week. So that means I want to avoid investments that have a lot of active management, like managing different leverage levels or having to claim rewards and compound very frequently. Any kind of active management related strategies like that, anything balancing risks or anything. So I want them to be quite automated. Secondly, I want to rebalance only about once a month, and rebalancing might mean just moving the money from the different investments depending on how they're doing, or maybe adding new investments, or taking money out of some, right? So you only want to do that around once a month. And finally, these want to be ideally all stablecoin denominated. So I'm not going to have any investments here that are BTC or Ethereum based. No tri-cryptos or GLPs or anything that basically has cryptocurrency price exposure. So I want to be no exposure to the cryptocurrency prices and just be pure generating DeFi yields or incentive yields. And so I want the portfolio itself to look a certain way. Like I'm going to build the portfolio under certain conditions, and I want to diversify them reasonably enough. So the major risk exposures in DeFi are threefold. Well, they're actually fourfold, but the major ones I'm going to talk about are three. So you have the market exposure, how much your investments and your portfolio is exposed to the specific, market dynamics. That's generally the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum. You have the exposure to different protocol risks, and then finally you have exposures to specific chains. And so to build a good portfolio, definitely a more passive type portfolio, a long-term portfolio, you want to be diversified across all these different risk factors. So here on the screen, you see a pretty good idealized split between the diversifications across the different factors. So I want to have about 50-50 offensive and defensive assets. So half of them, and by offensive and defensive, if you haven't seen my portfolio construction video, it's effectively an offensive asset or investment is one that the losses has an exposure to the crypto market. So that's something like just holding Ethereum. Obviously, the returns of Ethereum, the losses are directly correlated to the market. It's like holding a LP position. because LP positions, the losses are also correlated to the volatility and the movements of the market. And then so a defensive asset is a asset which the returns and losses, or more specifically the losses, are uncorrelated to the market. So that's things like investing in a lending protocol where you're generating interest, but the losses that you're expected to get are mainly from protocol risks or chain risks, which are not directly correlated to the market. The next one, I want to have about at least 4 different protocols. So I want to have my investments diversified across at least 4 different protocols. Ideally, you want to have as many protocols as possible. And at most, one protocol can have 33% of the portfolio value. That's at max, right? And the last one, I want to have at least 3 different chains to invest across. And at most, one chain can have 43% of all the portfolio's assets. So that's a good starter baseline. That's the minimum diversification required. And that's the kind of constraints on the portfolio that I'm going to create from that. All right, so the game plan is simply look for an investment across the different chains, analyze it, see what kind of returns, what kind of risks, and then construct a portfolio from among all the profitable investments found to maximize the compound growth rate of the portfolio, which is pretty much the standard method that I do for my own investments, and I'm just going to do it again under the constraints imposed because my own portfolio actually has a lot of active management. A lot of my positions are like LP positions where I need to rebalance. I'm rebalancing sometimes twice a day. So I can't be using any of these kind of things. So I'm going to have to re-look at some of the different opportunities, investments out there, do some analysis, and then I'm going to document all the analysis and construction through different YouTube videos. So maybe I'll look at, I think maybe 4 different chains, maybe Optimism, Arbitrum, Polygon, and Phantom, and look at a bunch of different potential investments and different strategies that can be done on each of these different chains. And I'll do a little video on maybe each chain or potentially across different of the investment types. Like some might be automated liquidity providing investments, and some might be more lending type strategies. Right, so if you're interested in following this along to see how, if you are more interested in doing like a passive portfolio, if maybe you want to recommend strategies to people who are not as in the weeds with DeFi, or maybe you just want to learn some extra protocols, or maybe you want to learn how to build a portfolio from scratch, then, like and subscribe, keep following, and watch how I'm going to build a portfolio for my old man.